So, the other day I was joking around in my video about writing fan fiction for Michael Emerson, and then I made the comment that I should write some fan fiction for his character from the practice, William Hinks. And the more that I thought about that after I turned the camera off, the more I thought, William Hinks really does deserve his own fiction. So I started one called A Visit from William, and it's a story between him and the lady at the desk, Lucy Hatcher. I did a small amount of research on the practice so that I could sort of get a few things in the story accurate, and I wrote the first page last night. Now the story is not finished and will most likely turn out to be X-rated, like most of my stories involving totally hot guys do. But I thought that it might be interesting for some of you if I read the first page and let you guys get sort of a taste for the story. Here's the first page, let me know what you think. Lucy Hatcher sunk lower in her leather office chair as she glared down at the clock on her computer. It had been blinking 12 a.m. since she arrived that morning to do her usual work. She hated daylight savings time and always forgot to set the clock. Although the pitch-black sky sprayed with little silver stars told her the hour was late as she turned away from the window to glare back down at the stack of files on her desk. She'd been working all day on several different projects, and by now everyone else had gone home. Yet she refused. Her vacation days were coming up soon, and Lucy was determined to finish all of her paperwork before taking her much-needed time off. It was a little creepy in the office alone, especially at night, and with all that had been going on between Lindsay and her stalker, William Hinks, Lucy felt uneasy sitting in the darkened building by herself. With only her desk lamp to offer light, her hazel eyes wandered towards the darkness and scanned the empty room, which had become eerily quiet all of a sudden. Only moments ago she'd completed her tasks, but for some reason remained seated behind her desk, as if to hide from a presence yet unseen in her imagination. When all of a sudden, that fear materialized out of the darkened room across from where she sat. A figure shifted slowly from the open doorway ahead of her, making a noticeable shuffling noise that caused Lucy to sit up straight in her chair, eyes widening with both alarm and panic, yet she couldn't move. Every muscle in her body locked up tightly as this silhouette revealed itself underneath the small light emitted from her lamp. It was none other than William Hinks. This not only frightened her, but arose many questions. How long had he been there watching? How did he get in undetected, and why was he there? She didn't have time to ask herself as she pulled back, watching him come towards her casually. Managing to lift one arm carefully, Lucy attempted to reach for the phone on her desk without him taking notice. It didn't work. "Don't even think about it," William spoke, the sound of his voice startling her as the silence was broken between them. She immediately stopped, dropping her arm to the side and keeping her eyes fixed on his. They appeared wide with a certain satisfaction she hadn't seen before. It frightened her, though she wanted to seem calm. "William, what are you doing here?" she asked naively, poorly concealing her terror. The corner of his mouth lifted into a devilish smile before he responded, "I was waiting for Lindsay, but she never came in to work today," he said, frowning towards the end of his sentence, as if disappointed. Lucy hesitated briefly, then replied, "She called in sick. It's the pregnancy. The doctor said it's normal." William cocked his head to the side, trying to find some sympathy he lacked to care for why she wasn't there today. "Guess it's just the two of us," he said, looking away at nothing in the distance, his eyes blank when they returned to her. Swallowing hard, Lucy gripped the arms of the chair in a feeble attempt to keep from trembling. "Yes, well, I've got to be going home. It's late." He took a step closer to her desk, revealing his all-black attire in the light as he glared down at her. "I thought you might want to stay and talk," William said, sounding as though he were giving a command rather than making a request. So she didn't move, and forced herself to keep talking. "I have a few minutes, but then I have to go home, okay?" Lucy finished, almost asking his permission to leave soon. Ever since he'd uttered her address in front of the staff, she felt uncomfortable around him. Not to mention her dog Chopper being found dead in the desk drawer shortly after some anonymous person left him for Lindsay. She knew it was William who murdered the puppy. just as she was sure he'd killed all 9 women he'd confessed to before Lindsay got him acquitted. Now she was sure to suffer for that mistake. "That's a nice shade," he muttered, glancing downward at her hands that had found their way onto the surface of her desk. At first she didn't understand, until she remembered painting her fingernails gold to match her shirt that day. He must have been referring to her color selection. Given his past history with women's fingernails, the remark creeped her out immensely, as she was sure he intended it to. "What is it you want to talk about, William?" He approached her even further, resting his hands on either side of the small desk and leaning in. "Do you know whether Lindsay will be coming in tomorrow?" As she was about to answer, her eyes caught the slightest glimpse of a knife tucked away behind his long black coat, hanging from his belt. The sight caused her to freeze, and she couldn't remember his question anymore. Picking up on her fear instantly, he relished it and knew right away she'd spotted his weapon. William stood up straight, and her eyes followed when he reached down to remove the knife from his belt and show it to her. Holding it firmly by the handle before gently bending down to hold it under the light for her. Its blade was long and rigid, like some kind of saw, and she wasn't about to stick around and find out why he'd brought it. Tossing all worries aside, she shot up away from the desk and tried to come around it from the left side, but he blocked her attempts by standing in the way, then extended his free hand to grab her arm firmly, twisting it behind her back effortlessly. She didn't expect such a small man to wield so much strength, and she let out a surprised yelp when he tightened his grasp. Now they were inches apart, and William held the knife in his other hand. Her eyes were quickly drawn to the weapon as it rose and came closer to her. "Please," she pleaded, but he continued like he didn't hear her and raked the tip of his blade across the rim of her gold, sparkling skirt, trailing it up over her stomach until he reached her throat. "William, no!" Lucy gasped when he pulled her closer, wrapping his arm around her waist and holding her steady. Now, don't lose your head," he teased, the tone of his voice brimming with sinister enjoyment while she squirmed weakly against him. The point of his knife scraped across the tender flesh of her neck before he finally pulled it back, unexpectedly setting it on the edge of her desk before he rapidly forced her to walk backwards to her chair. "Let go of me," she squealed, only bringing a wicked little smile to his face as he swiftly took a seat, yanking her onto his lap and retrieving his knife from the desk. He placed it to her throat, which caused her to be silenced, though her breathing remained heavy. "What do you want?" Lucy cried desperately. "Please, just let me go." "I'm sorry, Miss Hatcher. I'm fresh out of empathy," he answered cruelly, constraining her to his lap even further. With one arm tightly binding her to him, her struggles became less, and then she started to panic. "I'll call the police!" she exclaimed, though her words were nothing more than a hollow attempt to scare him. "I'd be amused to see you try, Lucy," William replied, still maintaining that same calm, eerie, monotone voice. "You killed those women, didn't you? All of them," she said aloud, then he raised his weapon, pressing its end into her skin just enough to break the flesh, yet not enough to hurt her yet. "It's that look of fear," he started, though she wasn't sure what he meant as he continued. "That look of horror on your face now. No one is coming to help you." His words were true and terrifying, making her shift uncomfortably on his lap until she felt him pressing against her skirt. "Is he growing aroused by all this?" she questioned, yet there was no doubt in her mind that he was hard. And that's all. That's all I have written so far. So, that's pretty much my day, that's pretty much my life. I know what you're thinking, whoa, another epic day in the life of Sarah. Tomorrow I'm going to tell you all about the skydiving trip that I took with Madonna and Justin Timberlake, so stick around for that. It was, not really noteworthy, but it was a pretty good day. It was a pretty good day. Hopefully all of you out there are having just a lovely day, and until next time, peace out.